Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Buffalo Bills Center of the West. My name is Eric Rossborough. I am Associate Cataloger and Senior Librarian at the McCracken Research Library, and we're really proud to present. The McCracken Library is really proud to present another installment in the Bob Richards series of lectures on local lore, which has been very illuminating to me as a transplant. Besides me and Bob, there are a lot of people that make this happen every month that you don't see, but that I couldn't get along without. One of them is Sam Hanna of the Buffalo Bill Museum. He is a tech guy extraordinaire and former sound man. He's doing the recording. I'd also like to thank John Gallagher and Jeff Dunham from our IT department. John edits and posts the videos that go up on YouTube. Jeff has helped us out with a lot of stuff. Also in the bookstore, Kristen Phipps and Debbie Copranace, who help us set up for the book signings after. Nancy McClure has done an awesome job writing press releases and getting them out to local media organs. I'd also like to thank Ken Stranier, the head of the PR department. Rich Herman and Bill Eagler have done a lot to help out with getting the facility ready every month, and I've been calling on all these people for all kinds of things, and they never fail to help me out. So I'm really appreciative of that. And especially the man on my right here is Mac Frost, family member of Bob Richard, who helps out. Bob is in about every few days into our department calling on Mac to help him edit the photos for Bob's talks, and he's been doing an awesome job. So thank you, Mac. And with that, we've got the 75 most beautiful miles in the world. 72, sorry. I told you I was a transplant, but I'm trying to learn. Anyway, we got Bob Richard here, former Marine pilot, Yellowstone Park Ranger, hunting guide, Red Cross expert, amongst other things. And with that, I give you Bob Richard.
It's on. Leave those there. There you go. You got it? Yeah, let's all scrunch together.
Yeah, we're a victim of our own popularity here, as our Karen says. We've got nearly a full house, and we've got a bunch of people in back who are looking for seats. So if you could scrunch up a little bit so everyone can sit. Not everyone likes to stand all the time like me. Thank you.
Should I lower this or just?
You should be good enough.
Thank you for coming. It's great to see the new friends as well as old friends. And we're going to get settled here and get started. Mac Frost not only helps me every time, Mac is also a cousin, and he's getting ready to do these presentations when I get too old, which is pretty soon. But he's had lots of practice, and I know he'll do a good job. And he is also my coach. Can everybody hear me all right? Okay, good. This is, I call it the Most Scenic 72 miles. It's what I love most. And it's between Cody and Yellowstone Lake Hotel, give or take a mile or two. And we search and try and find photos that none of you have seen, as well as some that you may have seen. This was taken by my father on the North Fork, overlooking the North Fork River. And that was my dog when I was in school and college. And that valley and those mountains, I traveled by horse, by hiking. As my family grew, I took my boys and wife up the different drainages, and we backpacked and we took horses. But you're going to get some of my fondest memories and some of the stories of my granddad and Ned Frost, my uncle, and of course Max, part of that. And he will add if I miss something. He's like a bus driver I had when I had grub stake expeditions. If I missed something, he would slow down, stop the bus, and he says, well, aren't you going to tell him about that? And so I had to think and say, what did I forget? And then we went on. But anyway, I'll do my best. There's still some seats down here if you want to come on and join us. We have a full house again. Thank you. This is my dad's favorite photograph, or one of his many favorites. And that's the B-25 of Husky looking at the Cedar Mountain, the Shoshone Canyon, Rattlesnake Mountain, and the Wapata Valley, center right. And that's what we're going to talk about. This also was the letterhead that my dad put on his business, his stationery. This is looking east towards Cody on the old highway through the Shoshone Canyon. This is looking up at the dam hill and also the dam before they raised it by 20 feet. By the way, the dam hill is open this Saturday to walk down and get a ride back up all day. And it's a great day at the Dam Visitor Center. This is coming out on the west side of the Shoshone Canyon, and the tunnels, there are 3 tunnels along there, and this is a F.J. Hiscock photograph. This is, you can see 3 tunnels here, and big trucks couldn't get through here, buses could not get through here, and the Chamber of Commerce worked for years to get a tunnel built so that we could get buses through the East Gate. And this is one of my favorite photographs. I hated to see the tunnels leave. This is a photograph of Holy City, and that's back in probably the 1920s. I found this and got it from the Park County Archives. That's Newton Creek, and that's back in the early 1900s. We had a cabin on Newton Creek, and then in the 70s, the Forest Service says, oh, this would make a great campground. We lost our lease and sold the cabin for $700, and it was moved down to Yellowstone Valley Inn and became the dining room, the Inn building at Yellowstone Valley Inn. This is looking from the Palisades upriver, and gives you just a feel of the 2-tracker that used to be there. And we have to congratulate the Highway Department. They found one feature that they put a sign out that says Chimney Rock. There are probably 40 chimney rocks in America, but that's the only one that has a sign. But thank you, Wyoming Highway Department. I wish they could name some of the other formations. This is looking downriver, but again, just some of the old and early photographs. This is looking at Bill Cody Peak, an early day photograph, and looking into Yellowstone Park. This is the original corkscrew that was built out of logs, and during that time, in 1908, Fred Richard and Ned Frost, were doing tours to Yellowstone. This is Fred on the wagon, my granddad, and he had a broken shoulder. And sitting next to him is a school teacher with 18 school teachers behind on horseback and wagon, going on an 18-day trip to Yellowstone. And they just crossed the corkscrew, and the woman driving it, the school teacher, before the trip was over, Granddad asked her to marry him and went back to Chicago and brought her back out here New Year's Day to become a wife of a trapper, outdoorsman, and tour operator. So I cherish this picture. In 1919, the Park Service rebuilt the corkscrew, and they used that through about 1927 or 28 when they built the present road up on the side of Sylvan Pass instead of coming up the bottom. And of course, from 1915 on, cars were allowed in the park. And this is what Sylvan Pass looked like 25 years and before, but they came in there with rock crushers and lowered the pass by several hundred feet as they took rock and put it throughout the park on roads. They've stopped that. They say, oh, you can't do that anymore. Now they haul rock all the way from Cody into the park. Interesting. This is an interesting photograph taken by F.J. Hiscock. Sylvan Lake and top-notch peak, but he named it Thunder Mountain. And I can't find Thunder Mountain there. I think it's much further across Yellowstone Lake and further up in the thoroughfare. And here's a photograph of the Scout. And this was put in the 20s there by the museum. And this is the man that really promoted Cody, the road to Yellowstone, and got the Cody people to help build the road over Sylvan Pass. You have on the left, you've got Cedar Mountain. Frost Cave is up there. Then it became Shoshone Caverns, became a national monument. Then it became Spirit Mountain Caverns, run by Claude and Katie Brown, and they got electricity up there, improved the road that the CCC's built, and then they were turned down for putting a tram up to it, and so it reverted back to the BLM, and they put bars across it, but they will give you a key to go into it. When I was in high school, I went into that cave, and coming out, I got stuck. And I had to peel my clothes, my pants, to get through the hole, and I've never gone back into a cave since. Really didn't like that. There we go. Are we on Heart Mountain?
Yeah,
Okay, this is Heart Mountain, and it's called Buffalo Heart by the Native Americans. It's a mark and identifying place for everybody that's lived here. And when you go away for a visit and come back, when you see Heart Mountain, you feel warm inside and you know you're home. And it's been that way even with the early map makers. When they came back, they knew they were in the what now is the Cody area. We have a nightly rodeo 3 months out of the year, and very successful. And my dad called it the pup rodeo. But anyway, great shows. They do a good job. And it's part of our tourism. This is a travertine cone hot spring. All the hot springs around here, including Damaris Hot Springs, are formed by the water flowing in the stratas and heated coming down there. It's not heated by magna. It is heated strictly by the water flowing through the stratas of limestone. And this particular cone, in the winters when I was a youngster growing up, was bubbling. It's since dried up. That's Damaris Hot Springs as we see it today. There's still a swimming pool there. It had a roof over it when Sheriff Blackburn would pick me up at 6 o'clock in the morning and take me out there, and he would swim a mile 5 days a week in the mornings if he was in town, and he always picked me up and let me swim with him, and he taught me how to do the crawl, the breaststroke, backstroke, and when I finished, I was not a bad swimmer after 3 or 4 years of going out there all winter and watching the snow come down through the roof, and the water was only 79 degrees, and we call it a needle bath because if you get into it, every pore is attacked by sulfur, and it feels like a million needles. It's not a great place to go swimming, trust me. This is the siphon that goes across the Shoshone River and provides water for Heart Mountain and about 183 different farms. This is showing the water coming out of the spillway and the dam, an early day photograph. This is today's visitor center, and again, Saturday is their big day, and they have carts to bring you back from the bottom of the dam hill. And my grandmother cussed the dam hill, and she said it was not the way we spell it today, D-A-M. She spelled it the other way. But we didn't have four-wheel drive, so if we got stuck in town because of ice and snow, we had to stay with relatives for a day or two until the road was sanded enough that even with chains we could get up it. This is looking out at Sheep Mountain and Buffalo Bill Reservoir. It became Buffalo Bill after World War II. Prior to that, it was a Shoshone Reservoir. Looking across the reservoir, you're looking at Carter Mountain, and on top, you can get on top of Carter Mountain from the backside on a forest road. Great drive, and there's an airfield up there. Actually, it's a plowed strip with lots of rocks, and I came home on leave, and my dad said, I need to go up and take pictures of the TV towers. And we borrowed a Piper Cub, and I flew him up there, landed, and I could only stick the two front wheels because the wind was blowing 40 miles an hour across the runway or the rock pile. Dad crawled out, went and took his photographs, crawled back in. I didn't have to add any power. I just pulled back on the stick and we lifted off and peeled back down to Cody. I almost bit off more than I could fly that day, but it was a great experience with my dad. How many have you seen this? It was been in the paper many times in the Enterprise. If you look carefully, you can see C-O-D-Y, Cody. And when it snows, it shows really good, but Dad put it in his paper and the Enterprise, and it's been run several times in the past few years. But you know that winter's coming when you can read Cody on the side of Rattlesnake Mountain. And that's taken from the head of the reservoir. Going up the North Fork, you have Black Mountain on the left, Trout Peak in the distance. And when Trout Peak is covered with snow, you know we're starting to get a good snowpack. This is the playground of the gods in Britisher Creek on the left side of it. And all these rock formations are in a book that I have published, and I can sign them upstairs after the talk. This is fall colors on Rattlesnake Creek, and our deciduous trees, when they turn, are some of the prettiest there are, both on the North Fork and some of our other drainages in the Cody area. Jim Mountain, and in front of Jim Mountain are the organ pipes that were named in 1895. There's the organ pipes with the sunlight on it and the Chinese wall. There you have Ned Frost on Jim Mountain looking down into the Wapata Valley. And I'm going to try and point out where the old Frost and Richard Ranch is. Or Mac, would you do that? And point out Green Creek, please.
This is Green.
You got to press the right button, Mac.
This is Green Creek here with his hat in front of it. And right here is where the Frost and Richard Ranch was at. And in the old days, the highway went right in front of the ranch, the roadway, and we'll show some pictures of that here after a bit.
Thank you, Mac. But his grandfather rode that horse a lot of hours to get that photograph. This is Mac's grandmother, Aunt Mary for me, Buffalo Bill holding Dick Frost, or was it Chew? And then I don't know the next man. He was the driver, and then Fred Garlow Sr., who married Buffalo Bill's daughter. This is the Prince of Monaco, and he was going hunting. He was a guest of Buffalo Bill's, and Bill Cody hired Fred Richard and Ned Frost to do the guiding, and Granddad, because he spoke French fluently, took the prince on a 3-week hunt. This is I call it the pagoda, the Smith Mansion. Lee Smith built that from the 1960s, and about 18 years ago fell off the top, broke his neck, and is still owned by the family. Lee lived in the bottom floor and raised his family for several years without water. They had to carry it in, that type of thing. This is the Mystic Lady, and look at the pile of antlers. What a wonderful, we all used to have those piles, and a wonderful place. Every time we picked up antlers, we would add them at our ranch or other ranches, the antlers. We didn't want to carry them on horses, that type thing. But Charles Kirkham has done a great job of saving and having that there. He also does a lot of antler work, and he's the finest napper of arrowheads you've ever seen in your life. But to talk him into it, it takes a lot of time to get him to help nap something. But I have some of his work. And Charles, you're here today, and thank you. I skipped over this. This is a laughing pig. The highway department, when they redid the road, was very concerned the pig would fall into the road, and they shored it up and had a lot of meetings about it, but it's still there. I have a photograph of a goose and or 2 Canadian geese on top of the pig's head. I don't know what I'm going to do with it, but I thought it was kind of neat. Here we have Indian paintbrush and lupin, and those bloom in the springtime and into June. We're going up the North Fork. We've entered the forest. Next is the Garden of the Goops. That's Mother Grundy and a little cowboy right behind her. This is the goose across the river. My kid says, "Dad, that's not the goose. That's Bart Simpson on a skateboard." I said, "You got to be kidding. Who's that?" So we had to go home, turn on the TV, and then they had to find Bart Simpson. I says, "No way." But anyway, everyone to his own naming of the rocks. These were all named and put in my book. And they were named by grandfathers and Ned Frost's guests on wagon tours going to Yellowstone. This is Snoopy on his doghouse, on his back. His nose is on the left, his feet up in the air. Or it can be Stanley's steamer going the other direction with the steam engine, the dog's feet, and the steering wheel and Stanley's lap. You got to use your imagination a little bit. This is the old lady in her cabin above Holy City, and I always say the rock next to it is her barn. This is looking at Holy City. You can see the old lady in her cabin, and Clock Tower is the highest peak, and there are other formations that you can look at. And Mac saw this, and then he went to one of my dad's photographs, and there's my dad's photograph taken much from the same place. This is looking up the river just before you get to the ranger station, and it's fishing time in the fall, great trout fishing. This is a visitor center at the Wapata Ranger Station. The only thing is they made it a very small bathroom stop, so buses never can stop there. And but they do have somebody there during the summer answering questions and being helpful. And the oldest ranger station in the forest and in America is right behind this building. Across the way is Harry Thurston's grave by a Michigan yellow pine. There's a fence around it, and his wife and granddaughter are also buried there. He was a district ranger after it became the Shoshone Forest. Here is a ruffled grouse. We call these sparrowhawks, kestrel. This is a camp robber. They tend to land on your shoulder or pick food right out of your hand. It's a gray jay. 4 men on a toboggan. This is one of Mac's photographs. And you'll notice the cat in the lap of the second person. But it's a fun one. The only place you can see it is by slowing way down carefully as you cross the Elks Fork River and look up to the southwest, and it will appear. But we call that the 4 men on a toboggan. Elk sheds or elk antlers, people hunt for in the springtime. All we did is hung them in trees or brought them into the ranch and piled them in a pile. And but it's now quite a collector's item, and they're worth some money. Now, how did I get this close to a black bear? Trust me, I was in the car with the window partially rolled down, and I did not get out, nor did my guests. But it's one of my favorite black bears. Blackwater Ridge and the clouds in the springtime. Mule deer posing. They always pose. It's great how they do that, and they always watch the tourists in the summer. This is a coyote on the lookout, trying to see what's going on. This one came right up next to the car and looked in my window or next to me. And I said, all right, I'll photograph you. I always wondered what he was thinking, but we didn't get that close. And then we have the inquisitive bull bison, or I call them bachelor bulls that have been thrown out of the herd. And he's checking out the firefighters memorial. And this was built after the Blackwater fire. And I learned from my dad that I had been on his back in a backpack while he photographed the fire in 1937. And a lot of memories. There's a trail you can go up there, and it's worth stopping, taking a look at. This is the Trinity, which is up by Newton Creek. hope, faith, and charity. This is a flicka sticking her head out of a hole in the tree where she's nesting her babies. Looking at the Palisades, looking to the east. And what a treat we have. There's probably 5 to 8 herds of mountain sheep every fall that show up and start breeding November and December. And January, right on the road. Of course, I have arguments with Game and Fish and the Forest Service and the Highway Department saying don't put salt on the highway. They lick it and they lick up the gravel and they get problems. And I think they ought to leave the salt off going up the North Fork. Personal point of view, but I think it's hard on our wildlife. And they lick the roads when that salt has been applied. How many of you have seen the fishing bear? It's by the Palisades, and it's a marker for those of us that take pack trips in the backcountry. When the river is flowing around the fishing bear, you don't try and cross the river. It's too high. It's the best marker you can find. Once the river has ceased to go around the fishing bear, you can cross the river with your pack horses and normally not get in trouble. And there's always the baby moose. And this mama had twins, and I got them to pose a couple of times. We still have moose on the North Fork, but if you're looking for moose, go to the Bighorns. There's 40, 50 moose up on top that you can photograph in a day without having to get out of your car. What a treat. I have to really look to find a moose on the North Fork today. And there we are with Henry Ford Rock. You can see it with a steering wheel. And it took years for my granddad to get me to see the bear about to bite him on the rear end. And then the other direction is Stanley Steamer going towards Cody. And then in front of Stanley, or in front of Henry Ford, is the wolf with a big eyelash. Got to have a little imagination. This is a bull elk, and what a nice set of antlers. And we see those on the North Fork, and we have a herd that summers there. Here's a ram that was licking salt and stuck his head in the window. I mean, he literally, I just had to put the car in gear, snap the picture, and get out of the way. But he was looking for salt. We've had problems in Yellowstone of people feeding mountain sheep potato chips, but not only mountain sheep, deer and other animals, because they're looking for salt. You don't want them to do that. Here's a cameo rock, and as you're just before you get to Absorka Lodge, look up to your right and you can see a woman's face looking to the left and her hair done up in a bun in the back. And next is Elephant Head, which is behind the Elephant Head Lodge. I was training guides when I took over Powder River Transportation in Cody for 10 years, and they'd been doing this tour for a number of years for somebody else, and I was re-educating them, and we stopped here, and I said, show me Elephant Head. They showed me 5 other elephant heads, but didn't show me the real elephant head. So we got that straightened out. But once you see it, you can see the trunk and his head. I did something wrong again.
I don't know just exactly what's doing that.
I'm hitting it right here. I don't want Mac to go to sleep on these things. He's got to pay attention. All right.
Back it up 1 or 2. There you go. That's good.
That hairy thing in the tree. A guest in the back seat says, there's hair in that tree. And I says, no, there isn't. I pulled over, backed up, and that's a porcupine. And porcupines climb into trees and eat the bark, and you never want to eat one. And they taste like pine. This is the barber's chair. As you pass Elephant Head Lodge, you can look up and see this going west.
The other rock formation there is generally called the pulpit.
I call this Freddie Garlow's foot. He owned Absorka Lodge for years, grandson of Bill Cody. And he didn't like me to mention that, oh, the foot's still there, Freddie. Is that your left or your right? And he'd grumble and mumble. He says, my guests don't need to hear you say that. And but anyway, it's a fun feature coming down the North Fork. And that's the iron. You can see the hole in the rock in the center. And somebody named that the iron. This, when you're looking at Elephant Head, if you look back to the northeast, you can see the hand with a finger. There's Chimney Rock. Now that one has a sign that says Chimney Rock. Coming up next is the Buffalo Bill Scout Camp. Glenn Nielsen, Husky Oil, and others contributed and built that in the 40s. And I thought it was interesting when I came across this next document. That lodge holds over 150 people, great kitchen, and they bring not only scouts from all over the world, both Boy and Girl Scouts, 4-H, church groups, and they get a week's experience in the outdoors in the wilds of Wyoming. And it's busy every summer. They even have a shooting range. They have fishing there. They have their own lake. It's well done. This is a thanks that I found, and can you read it back there? But all the names of the people in Cody and the area that donated money to help build that lodge in that scout camp, and they called it, I don't have my glasses on, I'm in trouble here, the Wapata Boy Scout Camp. And eventually that moved into the Buffalo Bill Scout Camp, and now it's changing again, but it's still the Scout Camp, but it's open for all guests and groups. And the lodges sometimes will have a large gathering and house everybody, and then they'll come in and use the Boy Scout Lodge for their big meetings. This is Bill Cody Peak, and that's in Yellowstone Park. And that's on your way to Yellowstone through the East Gate. I call this the King of the Road. It's in my book, and that's going over Sylvan Pass in the spring. And my guest sitting next to me says, oh, stop. Let him get on the car so he can get a good picture. I'm taking a camera out the window, backing up, taking a picture. And about that time, here comes a pickup from Cody, and they stop, and they're looking at him, and the bear jumped in the back of the pickup. And he put it in gear and started down the road, and the bear jumped out, and he says, wow, that wasn't very good, was it? I says, well, I don't know whether you're the bear or the people, but so be it. Anyway, one of my favorite bear pictures. Look at his claws. That's the old Pahaska Lodge that Bill Cody built. It's open for visitors to go in and visit. And what a treat to go in there and see all the memorabilia. And when I was a teenager, I worked for my Uncle Chew Frost and rented horses out there for 2 summers. And then I went into the Park Service from there. But in those days, we charged $1 an hour to go horseback riding, and we didn't take them out. We just sent them on their own. And boy, they don't let you do that now. Anyway, when you're at Pahaska, go into the dining room and look into the bar, and there is a Molesworth lamp that was built for Pahaska hanging there. These are things that people don't normally see, but if you know Molesworth and his furniture and his work, this is a very beautiful piece. Now, how many people can tell me where that's taken? Anybody? That's Crow Creek Ski Run before we had Sleeping Giant. And my Uncle Jess is on the right, my Uncle Ned's there, my dad's taking a picture, and I'm somewhere going up the rope line. And shortly thereafter, they got permission from the forest to build Sleeping Giant. But that's the only photograph that I have of the Crow Creek ski run, which was a rope tow. Wow, how many of you been up the North Fork and seen that? They run every day, clear the roads, and do a great job, and that's YDOT. This is Bear 104, and she usually had 2 cubs, raised lots and lots of them, and Bear 104 was hit by a car and was mounted, and she's upstairs when you come in the front entryway. It helps to know when you see some of these things and how it relates. But all her cubs over the years, and they're still going to be seen. And right now, this is an example of what you're going to be seeing, both grizzly and black bear, for the next 3 weeks, because the choke cherries are coming. And they're down there picking choke cherries. And I always hear the story of, well, I was picking choke cherries on one side and the bear was eating on the other. I said, not a good idea, but watch, it happens. That's a current photograph of the corkscrew. You can hike down there. I probably, when I was a ranger, I had a Jeep, and I drove my Jeep down the old road and parked it on top and photographed my Jeep sitting on that overpass. How many of you have seen this? This is the Sylvan Inn outhouse, and it's a 2-holer back in the trees on the east side of Sylvan Lake. Still there. The snow was working on it. It's getting tilted, but there's all kinds of memorabilia on both sides of the road where the Sylvan Lake Hotel was, and it was torn down in 1926 and moved to other parts of the park. Here's a moose at Sylvan Lake, and always a treat when you see wildlife before or after you get in the park. Old Faithful, it's a little past 72 miles, but one of my favorite photographs of Old Faithful. And you can't miss the Grand Canyon and the lower falls of the Yellowstone. This is my favorite photograph, and I've sold over 700 enlargements. Every retiree in the Park Service, as well as Xanterra, gets an enlargement, and they buy it from me and give to their retirees. But it's saying they're leaving Yellowstone, and you see them hanging in homes everywhere. This last, I wanted to say thank you to the McCracken Research Library for the help and the interest to sponsor this, and I think you always come and listen to whatever I have to say, but it's because of the McCracken Library and what they do to help not only me, but you and others to enjoy what we can see here. And thank you again, everybody.
We have time for a couple questions for Bob, if anyone's so inclined. And afterwards, please join us upstairs outside the bookstore so you can get your own personal autographed copy of one of Bob's books, or maybe more than one. Any questions here? Yes.
I will look for it, and I will ask Mac to help me. He knows right where it is. He has his fingers on all the collections, and Mac will add it to our next talk. Our next talk is going to be the Heart Mountain Relocation Center and my life with my granddad who ran the farms. And my mother helped print the newspaper, the Sentinel, at night. And the 15th of September, we'll talk about my experience at the relocation center and families that have been coming and meeting with my son who has Shoshone River Farms and telling my son all the things he should plant, including celery and other things that we didn't think would grow here, and they do. But the relationship from 1942 through 45 still continues here, and you've seen other things in the paper with Al and Manetta, Al Simpson, and it was a tragic thing, but we've all gained and benefited from it. Any other questions? Yes. Thank you, and thank you for sharing that. I hope you come next time. Any others? Yes, sir.
There's a couple piers upstairs from Jamaris Hot Springs.
Yes, they were used when they had a bridge across there and they were mining sulfur for World War I. And next to those piers, never walk up past the Damaris Hot Springs. We've lost 2 or 3 people from poisonous gas coming out of the side of the cliffs there. So just be aware. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Any other questions? Yes.
Is the current owner of the Best Western and the Ivy related to Buffalo Bill's son-in-law?
Bill Garlow is a great-grandson, and if you go into the Best Western Hotel, there's some large photographs of Buffalo Bill with his grandchildren sitting on his lap. And you're welcome to go in there anytime and look. But yes, sir. Any other questions? You've been a great audience as always. I hope you enjoyed it, and thank you again. It's a pleasure to have you.